Hello everyone. Welcome to Postcard Buddhism, the best channel for sharing knowledge about Buddhism. Today we will talk about the topic, who preach the Buddhist Dharma. Join us as we explore the various individuals and figures who have dedicated their lives to spreading the teachings of Buddhism, from the historical Buddha himself to modern-day practitioners and teachers. Let's dive into this enlightening discussion. Who preach the Buddhist Dharma? Teach the Dharma means to preach the truth so that people can realize the mortal danger, or to preach others about Buddha's teachings with the hope that they will eventually understand and be able to escape the cycle of births and deaths. The birth of the Buddha's teachings is the pinnacle of the Buddha's achievement. The Buddha's enlightenment was in some respects the pinnacle of his achievement, but it was his subsequent teaching of Dharma, truth, that laid the foundation for his enduring legacy. Thus, the Buddha was the first Dharma master who preached the first sermon and then started his preaching mission to save beings. After the time of the Buddha, a Dharma master is an honorific title for a monk of maturity and high standing. Dharma master is a title of respect used to address a Buddhist bhiksu, monk, or bhikshuni nun who can preach the Dharma to save beings. It implies that the person so addressed has mastered the Dharma and is qualified to teach it. A Dharma master is a Buddhist teacher, a master of the law, teacher of the law. The teachings that the Buddha taught were not for the sake of displaying knowledge to others, but to help them. Therefore, a real master is the one who is able to preach definitive dharmas which are not damaged by reasoning. According to Buddhism, all friends who cultivate with us, good or evil friends, can directly or indirectly give us lectures on dharmas in our path of cultivation. Good people speak good dharma, bad people speak bad dharma. For good advisors, we can directly learn good examples from them. For evil friends, we can also indirectly learn to do opposite to their behaviors, so we can prevent committing evil deeds. Also, according to Buddhism, all things in the world are constantly expounding the Dharma. Some things expound wholesome Dharma, while others expound unwholesome Dharma. Some things speak of the deviant knowledge and views of heretics. Others speak of the proper knowledge and views of the ultimate meaning of the middle way. In other words, those that speak wholesome Dharma teach people to see through things, to let things go, and to become free. Those that speak unwholesome Dharma teach people to preserve their illusions and continue to cling tightly to things, and so on and so on. According to the Avatamsaka Sutra, the Buddhas manifest hundreds of thousands of millions of sounds to proclaim the wonderful Dharma for sentient beings. We, ordinary people, should always remember that all the sounds in the world are speaking the Dharma for us. For example, the sounds of the stream and creeks are just like the soft sounds from the golden mouth of the Buddha. The green color of the mountains and forests is the pure color of the Dharma body, delighting those who see it. If every one of us understands this principle, then absolutely everything in the world is speaking the Dharma for us. Good people speak good Dharma, bad people speak bad Dharma, and animals speak the Dharma of being animals for us. They enable us to understand how they got to be good, bad animals, and so on. If you observe cats chase mice, lions chase tigers, tigers chase bears, bears chase deers, the strong oppress the weak, and so on. They are all speaking the Dharma for us. Each has its own cause and effect. When we contemplate and understand things this way, we can get rid of all attachments. If not, we will forever be sinking in the sea of life of attachments. Hoping this little writing will help those who wish to achieve and lead a life of peace, mindfulness, and happiness. Dharma. An overview of Dharma. According to Buddhism, Dharma means Buddhist doctrine or teachings. The teaching of the Buddhas which carry or hold the truth. The way of understanding and love taught by the Buddha doctrine. The Buddha taught the Dharma to help us escape the sufferings and afflictions caused by daily life and to prevent us from degrading human dignity and descending into evil paths such as hells, hungry ghosts, and animals, etc. The Dharma is like a raft that gives us something to hang on to as we eliminate our attachments, which cause us to suffer and be stuck on this shore of birth and death. The Buddha's Dharma refers to the methods of inward illumination. It takes us across the sea of our afflictions to the other shore, nirvana, Once we get there, even the Buddha's Dharma should be relinquished. The Dharma is not an extraordinary law created by or given by anyone. According to the Buddha, our body itself is Dharma, our mind itself is Dharma, the whole universe is Dharma. By understanding the nature of our physical body, the nature of our mind, and worldly conditions, we realize the Dharma. The Dharma that is the law of beginningless and endless becoming, to which all phenomena are subject according to causes and conditions. The Dharma, which comprises the spoken words and sermons of Sakyamuni Buddha, wherein he elucidated the significance of the unified three treasures and the way to its realization. The Dharma, the teaching imparted by the Buddha. All written sermons and discourses of Buddhas, that is, fully enlightened beings, as found in the sutras and other Buddhist texts still extant. Generally speaking, Dharma means things, events, phenomena. Dharma also means duty, law, or doctrine. The cosmic law which is underlying our world, but according to Buddhism, this is the law of karmically determined rebirth. The Dharma that is the law of beginningless and endless becoming, to which all phenomena are subject according to causes and conditions. When Dharma means phenomenon, it indicates all phenomena, things and manifestation of reality. All phenomena are subject to the law of causation, and this fundamental truth comprises the core of the Buddha's teaching. Dharma is a very troublesome word to handle properly, and yet at the same time it is one of the most important and essential technical terms in Buddhism. Dharma has many meanings. A term derived from the Sanskrit root dur, which means to hold or to bear. There seems always to be something of the idea of enduring also going along with it. Originally, it means the cosmic law which underlying our world, above all, the law of karmically determined rebirth. The teaching of the Buddha, who recognized and regulated this law. In fact, Dharma, universal truth, existed before the birth of the historical Buddha, who is no more than a manifestation of it. Today, Dharma is most commonly used to refer to Buddhist doctrine and practice. Dharma is also one of the three jewels on which Buddhists rely for the attainment of liberation. The other jewels are the Buddha and the Sangha. Etymologically, it comes from the Sanskrit root dri, means to hold, to bear, or to exist. There seems always to be something of the idea of enduring also going along with it. The most common and most important meaning of Dharma in Buddhism is truth, law, or religion. Secondly, it is used in the sense of existence, being, object, or thing. Thirdly, it is synonymous with virtue, righteousness, or norm, not only in the ethical sense, but in the intellectual one also. Fourthly, it is occasionally used in a most comprehensive way, including all the senses mentioned above. In this case, we'd better leave the original untranslated rather than to seek for an equivalent in a foreign language. To Buddhist theories, nothing is real and permanent. The five aggregates make up beings, pillars and rafters make a house, etc. All is temporal and merely phenomenal, fallacious and unreal. Names are only provisionary symbol or sign. All dharmas are empirical combinations without permanent reality. All things are false and fictitious and unreal names, i.e. nothing has a name of itself, for all names are mere human appellations. In the Lankavatara Sutra, the Buddha reminded Mahamati, as they are attached to names, images, and signs, the ignorant allow their minds to wander away. Things which exist only in name, i.e. all things are combinations of other things and are empirically named. All things or phenomena are combinations of elements without permanent reality. Phenomena, empirical combinations without permanent reality. The phenomenal which no more exists than turtle's hair or rabbit's horns. According to the Prajnaparamita Heart Sutra, the basic characteristic of all dharmas is not arising, not ceasing, not defiled, not immaculate, not increasing, not decreasing. The Buddha says, "He who sees the Dharma sees me." Dharma means the teaching of the Buddha. Dharma also means the doctrine of understanding and loving. Dharma means the doctrines of Buddhism, norms of behavior and ethical rules including Pitaka, Vinaya, and Sila. Dharma also means reflection of a thing in the human mind, mental content, object of thought or idea. Dharma means factors of existence which the Hinayana considers as bases of the empirical personality. According to Prof. Junjiro Takakusu in the Essentials of Buddhist Philosophy, the word Dharma has 5 meanings. First, Dharma would mean that which is held to, or the ideal, if we limit its meaning to mental affairs only. This ideal will be different in scope as conceived by different individuals. In the case of the Buddha, it will be perfect enlightenment or perfect wisdom, Bodhi. Secondly, the ideal as expressed in words will be his sermon, dialogue, teaching, doctrine. Thirdly, the ideal is set forth for his pupils as the rule, discipline, precept, morality. Fourthly, the ideal to be realized will be the principle, theory, truth, reason, nature, law, condition. Fifthly, the ideal as realized in a general sense will be reality, fact, thing, element, created and not created, mind and matter, idea and phenomenon, reflection of a thing in the human mind, mental content, object of thought or idea, and factors of existence, which the Hinayana considers as bases of the empirical personality. According to the Madhyamakas, Dharma is a protean word in Buddhism. In the broadest sense, it means an impersonal spiritual energy behind and in everything. There are four important senses in which this word has been used in Buddhist philosophy and religion. First, Dharma in the sense of one ultimate reality. It is both transcendent and immanent to the world, and also the governing law within it. Second, Dharma in the sense of scripture, doctrine, religion, as the Buddhist Dharma. Third, Dharma in the sense of righteousness, virtue, and piety. Fourth, Dharma in the sense of elements of existence. In this sense, it is generally used in plural. The first sermon that gave birth to Buddhism, almost 26 centuries ago. After the Buddha's enlightenment at Buddha Gaya, he moved slowly across India until he reached the Deer Park near Benares, where he preached to 5 ascetics his first sermon. The sermon preached about the middle way between all extremes, the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path. In the Deer Park, Benares, at first the Buddha was ignored by the 5 brothers of Kaundinya, but as the Buddha approached them, they felt that there was something very special about him, so they automatically stood up as he drew near. Then the 5 men, with great respect, invited the Buddha to teach them what he has enlightened. So the Buddha delivered his first teaching, turning the wheel of the Dharma. He began to preach, "O monk, you must know that there are 4 noble truths. The first is the noble truth of suffering. Life is filled with the miseries and afflictions of old age, sickness, unhappiness, and death. People chase after pleasure but find only pain. Even when they do find something pleasant, they soon grow tired of it. Nowhere is there any real satisfaction or perfect peace. The second is the noble truth of the cause of suffering. When our mind is filled with greed and desire and wandering thoughts, sufferings of all types follow. The third is the noble truth of the end of suffering. When we remove all craving, desire, and wandering thoughts from our mind, sufferings will come to an end. We shall experience undescribable happiness. And finally, the noble truth of the path that helps us reach the ultimate wisdom. The birth of the Buddha's teachings is the pinnacle of the Buddha's achievement. The Buddha's enlightenment was in some respects the pinnacle of his achievement, but it was his subsequent teaching of Dharma, truth, that laid the foundation for his enduring legacy. The community of monks and nuns that he established ensured the transmission of this doctrine to future generations, and in the 3rd century BC, the reign of the Emperor Asoka played an instrumental role in the dissemination of Buddhism in India. After he had attained enlightenment, the Buddha remained for 7 weeks at the site of the Bodhi tree and enjoyed great bliss. During this period, he realized that what he had come to understand was a profound and difficult truth, which other people relished worldly attachment would find hard to grasp. According to the Buddha Dharma is simply worldly Dharma, in which we turn ourselves around. It is the Dharma that most ordinary people are unwilling to use. Worldly people are sinking and floating in the worldly Dharma. They are always busy running here and there, constantly hurried and agitated. The source of all these activities is invariably selfishness, motivated by a concern to protect their own lives and properties. Buddha Dharma, on the other hand, is unselfish and public-spirited and springs from a wish to benefit others. Sincere cultivators always think of others' welfare. Sincere cultivators always forget their own ego. They always give up their own interests in service to others and never bring uncomfortable circumstances and afflictions to others. However, most people fail to clearly understand the basic ideas that the Buddha once preached. As a result, as we can see now, within Buddhist circles, we find struggle and contention, troubles and hassles, quarrels and strife. These problems seem to be no different from that of ordinary people, if we do not want to say worse than what we can find in worldly life. The Buddha predicted all these problems, thus he concluded that it would be pointless to try to teach others about his enlightenment. But the great god Brahmasahampati intervened and implored the Buddha to share his discoveries with humankind. The great god Brahmasahampati intervened and implored the Buddha to share his discoveries with humankind. Impelled by his great compassion, the Buddha decided to survey the world. He saw that beings are of different kinds, like lotuses in a pond. Some are immersed under water, other grow and rest on the surface, and other again come right out of the water and stand clear. He understood that just as some people have good qualities and others bad, some would be easy to teach and others would be difficult. Because of this diversity and out of his great compassion for all beings, the Buddha changed his mind and resolved to teach. The Buddha's first sermon was addressed to the 5 ascetics who had been his companions before the Enlightenment. At the deer park at Sarnath, near present-day Varanasi, he explained to them the content of his enlightenment in the form of the 4 noble truths. These ascetics were so struck by the depth of his insight and the novelty of his message that one of them instantly became an arhat, a worthy one who attains nirvana through a Buddhist teaching. The other 4 followed suit in the days to come. This momentous first sermon, which has become one of the better-known articulations of the Buddhist teaching and of Buddhism in general, is called the setting in motion of the wheel of Dharma. It is still celebrated in most Theravada countries in the festival called Asala Puja, which takes place on the full moon day of the month of July. For the next 45 years, until his ultimate extinction, the Buddha taught Dharma. The number of his followers increased steadily, and the community of monks, the Sangha, began to form. The Buddha himself continued wandering and begging for his food. He taught indiscriminately, talking to kings and paupers alike, and ceased traveling only in the 3 months of the rainy season. The Buddha did not appoint a successor. When his disciples asked who would lead them after his death, he retorted that they must turn to themselves and be guided by the Dharma as he had taught it to them. It would be the duty of the Sangha to maintain the Dharma when he was gone. As his death approached, the Buddha asked the assembled monks if they had any questions. The gathering remained silent. The Buddha's last words to the monks were, "All things composed are perishable. Now strive diligently." Then, lying on his right side between 2 sal trees, he began meditating into the many stages of his complete and final extinction, parinirvana, after which he would never again be reborn. His body was cremated, and in accordance with his wish, the remains were divided among humans and gods. Stupas, dome-shaped funerary mounds, were erected over the relics. Stupas can be seen today at such sites as Sanchi and Amaravati in India, Anuradhapura in Sri Lanka, and Borobudur in Indonesia. Mind and dharmas in Zen. All dharmas are created only by the mind. Zen master Somsan wrote, "In the whole world is a single flower." One day, as the big temple bell was being rung, the Buddha asked Ananda, "Where does the bell sound come from?" "The bell," replied Ananda. The Buddha said, "The bell. But if there were no bell stick, how would the sound appear?" Ananda hastily corrected himself. "The stick. The stick." The Buddha said, "The stick. If there were no air, how could the sound come here?" "Yes, of course, it comes from the air," the Buddha asked. "Air, but unless you have an ear, you cannot hear the bell sound." "Yes, I need an ear to hear it, so it comes from my ear." The Buddha said, "Your ear. If you have no consciousness, how can you understand the bell sound?" "My consciousness makes the sound." "Your consciousness. So Ananda, if you have no mind, how do you hear the bell sound?" "It was created by mind alone." All dharmas are manifestations of mind. Once, Manin wrote to a government official, "People in all walks of life have all sorts of things to attend to. How could they have the leisure to sit silently all day in quiet contemplation?" Here and now there are Zen teachers who have not managed to cultivate this sitting meditation concentration. They teach deliberate seclusion and quietude, and avoiding population centers, stating that Intensive meditation concentration cannot be attained in the midst of professional work, business, and labor, thus causing many students to apply their minds mistakenly. Many people who listen to this kind of talk consequently think of Zen as something that is hard to do and hard to practice. So they give up the inspiration to cultivate Zen, abandon the source, and try to escape, time and time again swimming in the worldly desires. This is truly lamentable. Even if they have a deep aspiration due to some cause in the past, they get to where they neglect their jobs and lose their social virtues for the sake of the way. As an ancient said, if people today were as eager for enlightenment as they are to embrace their lovers, then no matter how busy their professional lives might be, and no matter how luxurious their dwellings, they would not fail to attain continuous concentration leading to appearance of the great wonder. Great enlightenment. Many people of both ancient and modern times have awakened to the way and seen essential nature in the midst of activity. All beings in all times and places are manifestations of one mind. When the mind is aroused, all sorts of things arise. When the mind is quiet, all things are quiet. When the one mind is unborn, all things are blameless. For this reason, even if you stay in quiet and serene places deep in the mountains and sit silently in quiet contemplation, as long as the road of the mind monkey's horse of conceptualization is not cut off, you will only be wasting time. The third patriarch of Zen said, if you try to stop movement and resort to stillness, that stopping will cause even more movement. If you try to seek true suchness by erasing random thoughts, you will belabor your vital spirit, diminish your mental energy, and make yourself sick. Not only that, you will become oblivious or distracted and finally fall into a pit of bewilderment of Zen. Myriad things but one mind. Myriad things but one mind, all things as noumenal. According to the sun-faced Buddha, the teachings of Matsu in the Hungcho school of Chan, one day Zen master Matsu entered the hall and preached the assembly. Though the reflections of the moon are many, the real moon is only one. Though there are many springs of water, water has only one nature. There are myriad phenomena in the universe, but empty space is only one. There are many principles that are spoken of, but unobstructed wisdom is only one. Whatever we established, it all comes from one mind. Whether constructing or sweeping away, all is sublime function, all is one self. There is no place to stand where one leaves the truth. The very place one stands on is the truth. It is all one's being. If that was not so, then who is that? All dharmas are Buddha dharmas, and all dharmas are liberation. Liberation is identical with suchness. All dharmas never leave suchness. Whether walking, standing, sitting, or reclining, everything is always inconceivable function. The sutras say that the Buddha is everywhere. Su Yuan, name of a Chinese Zen master of the Yan Qi branch, Lin Qi sect, during the Sung dynasty. He was the author of the book titled Mind, the Source of All Dharmas, in the 13th century. One day a monk came and asked, what does it mean to snatch away the person but not snatch away save the object? Su Yuan replied, in the realm of self-awareness, if one can empty one's mind, what obstruction can be there from an outer object? Therefore, when a Zen master teaches a disciple of low capacity, he should snatch away the person but not the object. The monk asked, what does it mean to snatch away the object but not the person? Su Yuan replied, in the realm of self-awareness, one does not dwell on outer objects but reflects with one's mind alone. Therefore, the Zen master should snatch away the object but not the person when the disciple is of average capacity. The monk asked, what does it mean to snatch away both the person and the object? Su Yuan answered, in the realm of self-awareness, both the mind and the objects are empty, whence then comes the delusion. Therefore, the Zen master should snatch away both the person and the object when the disciple is well endowed. The monk asked, what then does it mean to snatch away neither the person nor the object? Su Yuan said, in the realm of self-awareness, mind naturally remains as mind and objects as objects. The Zen master therefore takes away neither the object nor the person when the disciple is highly gifted. All dharmas are the same as magical illusions. Illusion, the continually changing, impermanent phenomenal world of appearances and forms, of illusion or deception, which an unenlightened mind takes as the only reality. The phenomenal universe is subject to differentiation and impermanence. Maya is merely a medium through which we measure and appraise the phenomenal world. It is the cause of illusion when this world of form is incorrectly perceived as static and unchanging. When it is seen for what it is, namely, a living flux grounded in emptiness, Maya is Bodhi, or inherent wisdom. According to Zen Master Tao An 312-385, in Shan Men Xuan Wai, all dharmas are the same as magical illusions. Because they are the same as magical illusions, they are called the worldly truth. The mind and spirit are real and not empty. This is the truth of supreme meaning. If the spirit is empty, then to whom are the teachings given, and who cultivates the path to advance from an ignorant state and attain sagehood? Therefore it should be known that the spirit is not empty. In Zen, all things are like Maya, illusion, the continually changing, impermanent phenomenal world of appearances and forms, of illusion or deception, which an unenlightened mind takes as the only reality. The phenomenal universe is subject to differentiation and impermanence. Maya is merely a medium through which we measure and appraise the phenomenal world. It is the cause of illusion when this world of form is incorrectly perceived as static and unchanging. When it is seen for what it is, namely, a living flux grounded in emptiness, Maya is Bodhi, or inherent wisdom. One of the favored analogies used by the Prajna philosophers when they wish to impress us with the doctrine of emptiness is that of Maya, and they are frequently called by other teachers the Mayavadins. According to the Prajnaparamita Sutra, once the Buddha asked Subhuti, "O Subhuti, do you think Maya to be different from Rupam and Rupam from Maya? Do you think again Maya to be different from Vedana, Samjna, Samskara and Vijnana, and Vedana, Samjna, Samshara and Vijnana from Maya?" Subhuti said, "No, Blessed One, they are not different. If Rupam is different from Maya, it is not Rupam. If Maya is different from Rupam, it is not Maya. Maya is Rupam and Rupam is Maya. The same can be said of Vedana, Samjana, Samshara, and Vijnana." The Buddha asked, "O Subhuti, do you think the 5 clinging skandhas constitute bodhisattvahood or not?" Subhuti said, "O Blessed One, they do." The Buddha added, "O Subhuti, and you should know that these 5 clinging skandhas are no more than Maya itself. Why? Because Rupam is like Maya, and Vedana, Samjana, Samshara, and Vijnana are like Maya. And these 5 skandhas and 6 senses are what constitutes bodhisattvahood. And therefore, the bodhisattva too is like Maya. Those who wish to discipline themselves in the Prajnaparamitas should do so as if disciplining themselves in Maya. But those bodhisattvas who have first started in their disciplining exercises may be terribly frightened and led astray if they are not properly guided by good spiritual teachers." Subhuti said, "O Blessed One, such a discourse as this, indeed, if the hearer is not properly instructed by a great competent master of the Prajnaparamita, will lead us to the follies of libertinism." The Buddha asked, "It is like a magician conjuring up by his magical art a large crowd of beings at a crossroad. As soon as they are seen to come into existence, they vanish. Oh, Subhuti, what do you think? Do they really come from some definite locality? Are they real realities? Do they really pass away somewhere? Are they really destroyed?" Subhuti said, "Oh no, Blessed One." The Buddha said, "It is the same with the bodhisattva. Although he leads innumerable sentient beings to nirvana, in reality, there are no sentient beings to be led to nirvana. Those who are not frightened at all, even when listening to such discourses as this, are true bodhisattvas well fortified in the Mahayana armor." To be spontaneous harmony with daily affairs is happiness. In his first meeting with Master Shito, Pangyun asked him, "Who is he and who is not dependent upon the 10,000 things, all phenomena?" Immediately, Shito held Pangyun's mouth shut, and insight dawned on the layman. Later, Shito inquired about his everyday affairs. Pangyun answered with a poem, which, freely translated, is as follows: "There is nothing special about my daily affairs. I am simply in spontaneous harmony with them, clinging to nothing and also rejecting nothing. I encounter no resistance and am never separate. What do I care about the pomp of purple roads? The pure summit was never sullied by so much as a fleck of dust. The wondrous action of supernatural forces I find in hauling water and chopping wood." When Zen Master Bankei was preaching at Ryuman Temple, a Shinshu monk who believed in salvation through the repetition of the name of the Buddha of Love was jealous of his large audience and wanted to debate with him. Bankei was in the midst of a talk when the monk appeared, but the fellow made such a disturbance that Bankei stopped his discourse and asked about the noise. The Shinshu monk boasted, "The founder of our sect had such miraculous powers that he held a brush in his hand on the bank of the river. His attendant held up a paper on the other bank, and the teacher wrote the holy name Amida through the air. Can you do such a wonderful thing?" Zen Master Bankei replied lightly, "Perhaps your fox can perform that trick, but that is not the manner of Zen. This old monk's miracle is that when I feel hungry I eat, and when I feel thirsty I drink." The azure heaven and the bright sun, constantly free activities. At the end of the summer retreat, Chuyen said to his assembly, "All summer long I've been talking to you brothers, look and see if my eyebrows are still there." Tao Fu said, "The thief's heart is cowardly." Chongqing said, "Groan." Yunmen said, "Quan, a barrier or gate as at a border crossing." After concentrating on Quan for 10 days, Shuho came to a deep concentrating. He later wrote that in penetrating the koan, he came to a state of non-duality, in which all opposites were reconciled. The whole of the Dharma, he declared, was clear to him. Bathed in sweat, he rushed to express his understanding to his teacher. But before he had a chance to speak, Nanpo was able to know from his deportment that he had attained enlightenment. "I had a dream last night," Nanpo told him, "in which it seemed that the great Yunmen himself had come into my room. And here today you are, a second Yunmen." Shuho, embarrassed by the compliment, covered his ears and fled from his teacher's chamber. But the next day he returned and presented Nanpo with 2 poems he had written to commemorate his achievement. Having once penetrated the cloud barrier, the living road opens out north, east, south, and west. In the evening resting, in the morning roaming, neither host nor guest. At every step the pure wind rises. Having once penetrated the cloud barrier, there is no old road, the azure heaven and the bright sun, these are my native place. The wheel of free activity constantly changing is difficult to reach. Even the golden-hued monk, Kasyapa, bows respectfully and returns. Buddhist teachings are the raft of Dharma for those who wish to cultivate. From beginningless eons in the past, we have died and been reborn, over and over, passing through hundreds of thousands of asankhya's. During all this time, we have never encountered the Buddha Dharma, so our bad habits and faults have not decreased by the slightest bit. In fact, our ignorance and afflictions have increased day by day. Now that we have encountered the Buddha Dharma, we might say that the roots of goodness we have planted throughout measureless eons in the past have matured, enabling us to meet the wonderful and inconceivable dharmas. Someone who lacked these roots of goodness, who has no virtuous practices, would never have the chance to encounter the Buddha Dharma. Therefore, we should cherish our precious time. Do not let the time pass in vain. In the Alagudupama Sutta, the Buddha compares the dharmas to a raft which has to be left off after crossing the stream. They are not meant to be taken as ultimate tenet. In Buddhism, dharma refers to all the methods of cultivation taught by the Buddha, which lead to ultimate enlightenment. They are means that lead to an end, not an end themselves. The Buddha's teaching is likened a raft for going the other shore. All of us depend on the raft of Dharma to cross the river of birth and death. We strive with our hands, feet, and wisdom to reach the other shore. When the goal, the other shore, is reached, then the raft is left behind. The form of teaching is not final dogma but an expedient method. According to the discourse on the water snake's parable, the Buddha taught, "My teaching is like a raft for crossing over, not for carrying." Also, according to the middle-length saying, the Buddha taught, "The Dharma that I teach is like a raft." Even Dharma should be relinquished. How much the more that which is not Dharma. The raft of Dharma is for crossing over, not for retaining. Why should we quest for the truth? According to the Flower Adornment Sutra, chapter 38, there are 10 kinds of quest for truth of great enlightening beings. Enlightening beings who abide by these can attain great knowledge of all elements of Buddhahood without being instructed by another. First, quest for truth with a straightforward mind, being free from dishonesty. Second, diligent quest for truth, being free from laziness. Third, wholly devoted quest for truth, not begrudging their lives. Fourth, quest for truth to destroy all sentient beings' afflictions, not doing it for fame, profit, or respect. Fifth, quest for truth to benefit self and others, all sentient beings, not just helping themselves. Sixth, quest for truth to enter knowledge of wisdom, not taking pleasure in literature. Seventh, quest for truth to leave birth and death, not craving worldly pleasures. Eighth, quest for truth to liberate sentient beings, engendering the determination for enlightenment. Ninth, quest for truth to resolve the doubts of all sentient beings, to free them from vacillation. 10th, quest for truth to fulfill Buddhahood, not being inclined to lesser aims. 10 non-seeking practices for Buddhists, an excellent lecture on Buddhist Dharma. The Buddha always reminds his disciples about 10 things that should be always memorized. First, we should not yearn that our bodies be always free of diseases, because a disease-free body is prone to desire and lust. Because with a disease-free body, one tends to be tempted with desire and lust. This will lead to precept breaking and retrogression. Second, we should not wish that our lives be free of all misfortune, adversity, or accident, because without them, we will be easily prone to pride and arrogance. This will lead us to be disdainful and overbearing towards everyone else. If people's lives are perfect, everything is just as they always dreamed, without encountering heartaches, worries, afflictions, or any pains and sufferings, then this can easily give way to conceit, arrogance, etc., thus becoming the breeding ground for countless transgressions and offenses. Sincere Buddhists should always use misfortunes as the opportunity to awaken from being mesmerized by success, fame, fortune, wealth, etc., and realize the Buddha's teachings are true and accurate, and then use this realization to develop a cultivated mind seeking enlightenment. Third, we should not wish that our mind cultivation be free of all obstacles, because without obstacles, we would not have opportunities to excel our mind. This will lead to the transgression of thinking that we have awakened when in fact we have not. Fourth, we should not wish that our cultivation be free of demonic obstacles, because our vows would not be then firm and enduring. This leads to the transgression of thinking that we have attained, when in fact we have not. Fifth, we should not wish that our plans and activities meet with easy success, for we will then be inclined to thoughts of contempt and disrespect. This leads to the transgression of pride and conceit, thinking ourselves to be filled with virtues and talent. Sixth, we should not wish for gain in our social relations. This will lead us to violate moral principles and see only mistakes of others. Seventh, we should not wish that everyone at all times be on good terms and in harmony with us. This leads to pride and conceit and seeing only our own side of every issue. Eighth, we should not wish to be repaid for our good deeds, lest we develop a calculating mind. This leads to greed for fame and fortune. Ninth, we should not wish to share in opportunities for profit, lest the mind of illusion arise. This leads us to lose our good name and reputation for the sake of unwholesome gain. 10th, when subject to injustice and wrong, we should not necessarily seek the ability to refute and rebut, as doing so indicates that the mind of self and others has not been severed. This will certainly lead to more resentment and hatred. Thus, the Buddha advised all of us to turn suffering and disease into good medicine. Consider diseases and sufferings as miraculous medicine. Turn misfortune and calamity into liberation. Take misfortune and adversity as means of liberation. Turn obstacles or high stakes into freedom and ease. Take obstacles as enjoyable ways to cultivate ourselves. Turn demons or haunting spirits into Dharma friends. Take demonic obstacles as our good spiritual advisors. Turn trying events into peace and joy. Consider difficulties as our joy of gaining experiences or life enjoyments. Turn bad friends into helpful associates. Treat ungrateful people as our helpful aids. Turn opponents into fields of flowers. Consider opponents as our good relationships. Treat ingratitude as worn-out shoes to be discarded. Consider merits or services to others as ragged slippers. Turn frugality into power and wealth. Take frugality as our honor. Turn injustice and wrong into conditions for progress along the way. Consider injustice or false accusations as our virtuous gate to enlightenment. Who preached the Buddhist Dharma? An overview of preaching the Dharma. The responsibility of a preacher is to propagate the wonderful Buddha Dharma, Objectively speaking, the Buddha Dharma is so wonderful that so far no philosophers can ever argue or deny. To many people, Buddhism is always the best. However, for non-Buddhists, the so-called wonderful teachings seem nonsensical if they do not have the opportunity to hear them. How sorry. It is certainly that the majority of religions want to transform a bad person into a good one. But there are still a lot of religious cults that rigidly give people with blind faith and make them more and more ignorant. Therefore, we need more Buddhist lecturers to propagate the wonderful Buddha Dharma. Preaching the Dharma means to preach the truth, suffering, and the end of suffering. Teach the Dharma, or teach the Dharma, means to preach the truth so that people can realize the mortal danger, or to preach others about Buddha's teachings with the hope that they will eventually understand and be able to escape the cycle of births and deaths. According to the Agama Sutra, in 45 years of preaching the Dharma, the Buddha must have preached many hundreds of discourses, but he declared explicitly that he did preach only on suffering and the end of suffering, and nothing else. He exhorted his disciples to go forth to preach the Dharma and to explain the holy life for the welfare of the many, for the happiness of the many, out of compassion for the world, for the advantage, for the happiness of the deities and human beings. The Buddha made it very clear that his purpose in preaching the Dharma was not to quarrel with other religious leaders or to compete with antagonistic doctrines. There is no quarrel in his preaching. He just shows the way to enlightenment and liberation from all sufferings and afflictions. The Buddha is always filled with love and compassion for all living beings. Even when he takes a rest, he still wants to spread his love and compassion to other beings. His preaching is only performed out of compassion and love for the world. However, at the end of his life, the Buddha emphasized on, "Not a word has been said nor declared." This statement was said by the Buddha when he emphasized the danger of abusing words. He said, "In 45 years, I haven't said a word." Later, this statement has become popular when Zen masters using the statement to teach their disciples. Besides, the Buddha also emphasized on the unutterable. Later, in the 7th century, it became the Zen notion that Zen utilized to explain that the experience of awakening cannot be captured in words. This is connected with the general orientation of Zen, which is suspicious of the distorting power of words and concepts. The Buddha, the first Dharma master who preached the first sermon and then started his preaching mission. After the Buddha's enlightenment at Buddha Gaya, he moved slowly across India until he reached the Deer Park near Benares, where he preached to 5 ascetics his first sermon. The sermon preached about the middle way between all extremes, the 4 noble truths, and the noble eightfold path. In the Deer Park, Benares, at first, the Buddha was ignored by the 5 brothers of Kaundinya, but as the Buddha approached them, they felt that there was something very special about him, so they automatically stood up as he drew near. Then the 5 men, with great respect, invited the Buddha to teach them what he has enlightened. So the Buddha delivered his first teaching, turning the wheel of the Dharma. He began to preach, "O monk, you must know that there are 4 noble truths. The first is the noble truth of suffering. Life is filled with the miseries and afflictions of old age, sickness, unhappiness, and death. People chase after pleasure but find only pain. Even when they do find something pleasant, they soon grow tired of it. Nowhere is there any real satisfaction or perfect peace. The second is the noble truth of the cause of suffering. When our mind is filled with greed and desire and wandering thoughts, sufferings of all types follow. The third is the noble truth of the end of suffering. When we remove all craving, desire, and wandering thoughts from our mind, sufferings will come to an end. We shall experience undescribable happiness. And finally, the fourth is the noble truth of the path that helps us reach the ultimate wisdom. Since then, the Buddha spread the seeds of Bodhi far and wide. Specifically after the time the Buddha met with Yasas and preached to him the teachings of Buddhism, Yasas and 50 friends of his immediately donned the yellow robe and followed him. They were the first large group of Sangha to take vows right after the Buddha's enlightenment. Henceforth, the Buddha and his Sangha started his preaching mission. On one occasion, while on his way to Magadha, a kingdom in central India at the time, the Buddha called on Uruvilva Kasyapa, the leader of the fire-worshipping cult, and asked for lodging. Uruvilva Kasyapa showed the Buddha a stone hut and warned that inside the hut there was a poisonous dragon that always appeared in the middle of the night to devour human beings. So, not be regret if the Sangha of the Buddha chose to stay there and were eaten up. However, the Buddha and his new Sangha still decided to enter the stone hut and sat calmly in a crossed-legs posture. By midnight, the poisonous dragon appeared, showed its jaws widely, and clutched its sharp claws, but it could neither harm the Buddha nor the new Sangha. The following day, beyond the prediction of Uruvilva Kasyapa and his followers, the Buddha and his new Sangha were still safe and sound in that stone hut. So Uruvilva Kasyapa and his followers went from extreme surprise to admiration. So Uruvilva Kasyapa came to consult the Buddha about the methods of correct practices. After hearing the wonderful Dharma from the Buddha in his ever-convincing tone and his virtuous manner, Uruvilva Kasyapa was now totally convinced. He then determined to give up what he had practiced in the past and led his 500 disciples to take refuge in the Buddha. After the Buddha converted Uruvilva Kasyapa and his 500 followers, he also preached to them the Four Noble Truths. All of them was filled with joys of the Dharma, and found that they were very lucky to have the Buddha's help to get rid of the evils, to receive the good, and come to tread on the right path. After that, Uruvilva Kasyapa met his two brothers and gave them the account of how he was converted. The two brothers also agreed to attend the Buddha's preaching and finally took refuge in the Buddha. It should be reminded that the two brothers of Uruvilva Kasyapa also had 500 followers. So in a very short period of time, the new Sangha of the Buddha already had more than 1,000 people. All of them followed the Buddha to return to Mount Vulture Peak in Rajagra. For the whole Sangha only walked. This long procession of monks on the move caught the attention of the entire kingdom of Magadha. In his preachings, the Buddha always reminded that Buddhists always need two ways of education. The first way is secular education, and the second one is religious education. These two ways are considered as the two wings for a bird. Without two wings, no bird can fly. Similarly, without these two ways of education, Buddhists would lead to a poor and obscure life, not only in the secular world, but also in the spiritual life. Secular education will help us with an appropriate profession to support our family, while religious education will help us lead a true happy life. As a matter of fact, religious education is extremely necessary, for it teaches us how to think and act in order to be good and happy. Besides, it also helps us love and understand the meaning of life so that we are able to adjust ourselves to its laws in any circumstances. After experiencing 6 years in ascetic practices, the Buddha advised his followers to follow the middle path. He taught Buddhists should always make best use of their secular life while cultivating the path of true happiness in this world and hereafter. According to the Agama Sutra, in 49 years of preaching the Dharma, the Buddha declared explicitly that he did preach only on suffering and the end of suffering and nothing else. He exhorted his disciples to go forth to preach the Dharma and to explain the holy life for the welfare of the many, for the happiness of the many, out of compassion for the world, for the advantage, for the happiness of the deities and human beings. The Buddha made it very clear that his purpose in preaching the Dharma was not to quarrel with other religious leaders or to compete with antagonistic doctrines. There is no quarrel in his preaching. He just shows the way to enlightenment and liberation from all sufferings and afflictions. The Buddha is always filled with love and compassion for all living beings. Even when he takes a rest, he still wants to spread his love and compassion to other beings. His preaching is only performed out of compassion and love for the world. There are over 150 Buddhist sutras. All of them are talking about the danger of mortality. So to preach others about Buddhist teachings with the hope that they will eventually understand and be able to escape the cycle of births and deaths. Dharma Masters. After the time of the Buddha, a Dharma Master is an honorific title for a monk of maturity and high standing. Dharma Master is a title of respect used to address a Buddhist bhiksu monk or bhikshuni nun who can preach the Dharma to save beings. It implies that the person so addressed has mastered the Dharma and is qualified to teach it. A Dharma master is a Buddhist teacher, a master of the law, teacher of the law. The teachings that the Buddha taught were not for the sake of displaying knowledge to others, but to help them. Therefore, a real master is the one who is able to preach definitive dharmas which are not damaged by reasoning. The Buddha taught in the miscellaneous Agama, "Monks and scholars, you should accept my words not out of respect, but on analyzing it." Sincere Buddhists should not determine that a master is a reliable source of refuge by the fact that his body was adorned with good marks, or with his good voice, but because his preaching for the achievement of higher status and definite goodness are reliable. Dharmakirti taught, "A master must be one who is skilled in which behavior is to be adopted and which discarded. One should not accept a master because that person performs miracles, has the supernatural power or psychic power to see things in the distance, or is able to create certain physical emanations. Whether one can see far in the distance or not does not matter. If it were sufficient to be able to see things at a distance, then one should go for refuge to a vulture. So what matters here is whether one knows the techniques for achieving happiness." It should be noted that teachers of the law in Buddhism are not limited to monks and nuns, but include any persons who have the ability and devote themselves to spreading the teachings of the Buddha, whether monks, nuns, lay devotees, either men or women. In the process of cultivation, if we believe and discern the teaching after hearing it, and if we raise the mind of joyful acceptance of it, we would keep it firmly then, reading and reciting the sutra to inscribe it on our memory. As a personal discipline, this practice is done to establish the foundation of our faith. When our faith reaches a high level, we cannot help transmitting the teaching to others. As a result, we expound the sutra or teaching and copy it in different forms, such as videotapes and DVD, etc. Generally speaking, there are 5 kinds of masters or teachers: teachers of the sutras, teachers of the Vinaya, teachers of the Sastras, teachers of the Abhidharma, and teachers of the Zen or meditation. However, there are also 5 kinds of heterodox masters, or 5 improper ways of gaining a livelihood for a monk, 5 kinds of deviant livelihood. First, changing his appearance theatrically or displaying an unusual appearance to cheat people. Second, advertise his own power or virtue, or using low voice in order to appear awesome. Third, fortune-telling or performing divination and fortune-telling. Fourth, hectoring and bullying. Fifth, praising the generosity of another to induce the hearer to bestow presents. According to the Mahayana Buddhist tradition, there are 5 kinds of Dharma master. The first kind of Dharma master is receiving and keeping master. Receiving indicates believing deeply in the teachings of the Buddha, and keeping means to adhere firmly to that belief. The second kind of Dharma master is reading master. Reading means actually reading the sutras. This practice includes reading the sutras aloud, or reading them silently, or listen intently to others' reading of them. The third kind of Dharma master is reciting master. Reciting means to recite the sutras from memory. This practice includes the repetition of words of the sutras that we have learned by heart and the mental repetition of their meaning. To be able to do this, the teaching becomes deeply rooted in our mind through repeated recitation from memory. The fourth kind of Dharma master is expounding master. Expounding means to explain the meaning of the sutras to others. This is both an indispensable practice for spreading the teachings of the Buddha and also a practice for our own benefit. It is difficult for us to preach the teaching to others, and for this reason, we must study the sutras deeply and do this over and over again. While preaching the teaching to others, it is extremely difficult if we lack our own faith and discernment of the teaching. The fifth kind of Dharma master is copying master, a master who copies the sutra by hand. This practice is significant in 2 ways. One is its practice for propagating the teaching, and the other is its practice for deepening our own faith and discernment. Before the art of printing was invented, copying sutras by hand was necessary in order to spread them. In modern times, we make use of printing and other high techniques in spreading the teaching. The duties of copying masters also include spreading the teachings of the Buddha by making best use of printing, movies, videotapes, DVD, etc. There are 4 things a Dharma master must concern. First, a Dharma master must be concerned about his own behavior. Second, a Dharma master must be concerned about his choice of words when he approach and teach people. Third, a Dharma master must be concerned about his motive and the end he wishes to accomplish. Fourth, a Dharma master must be concerned about the great compassion. According to Buddhist traditions, there are 5 virtues of the teacher of the discipline. First, ability to obey to the rules. Second, 10 years as a monk. Some sects require 20 years or more. Third, ability to explain the Vinaya. Fourth, ability to understand and practice meditation thoroughly. Fifth, ability to explain the Abhidharma. The Buddha also taught, to be a trainer of elephants, one must have 5 qualifications. To follow the Buddha's noble path to enlightenment, one must have the same 5 good qualities: good health, self-confidence, diligence, sincerity of purpose, and wisdom. According to the Mahaparinirvana Sutra in the Digha Nikaya, Volume 16, the Buddha compassionately reminded Ananda, "It is through not understanding the 4 noble truths, O bhikkhus, that we have had to wander so long in this weary path of rebirth, both you and I." On his last days, the Buddha always reminded his disciples to be mindful and self-possessed in learning the threefold training. Such is right conduct, such is concentration, and such is wisdom. In his last instructions to the order, the Buddha told Ananda, "The Tathagata does not think that he should lead the order, or the order is dependent on him. Therefore, Ananda, be lamps to yourselves. Be a refuge to yourselves. Go to no external refuge. Hold fast to the Dharma as a lamp. Hold fast to the Dharma as a refuge." And how, O Ananda, is a bhikkhu to be a lamp to himself, a refuge to himself, going to no external refuge, holding fast to the Dharma as a lamp? Herein, a bhikkhu lives diligent, mindful, and self-possessed, overcoming desire and grief in the world, reflecting on the body, feeling, and mind and mental objects. In Kushinagara, the Buddha told his last disciple, Subhata, "O Subhata, in whatever doctrine the Noble Eightfold Path is not found, neither is there found the first samana, nor the second, nor the third, nor the fourth. Now in this doctrine and discipline, O Su, there is the Noble Eightfold Path, and in it too are found the first, the second, the third, and the fourth samanas. The other teachers' schools are empty of samanas. If, O Subhata, the disciples live rightly, the world would not be void with arahants. Void of true saints are the system of other teachers. But in this one, may the bhikkhus live the perfect life, so that the world would not be without saints." Then the Buddha turned to everyone and said his final exhortation, "Behold now, O bhikkhus, I exhort you, subject to change are all component things. Strive on with diligence. External states or objects are preaching the Dharma. According to Buddhism, the sphere of form for the eye, of sound for the ear, of smell for the nose, of taste for the tongue, of touch for the body, etc. They all are preaching the Dharma. As a matter of fact, all the sounds in the world are speaking the Dharma for us. For example, the sounds of the stream and creeks are just like the soft sounds from the golden mouth of the Buddha. The green color of the mountains and forests is the pure color of the Dharma body, delighting those who see it. Fish swim in the water, but they don't know they are in water. Every moment we breathe in air, but we do it unconsciously. We would be conscious of air only if we were without it. In the same way, we are always hearing the sounds of cars, waterfalls, rain, etc. But we do not realize that all these sounds are sermons. They are the voice of the Buddha himself preaching to us. In fact, we hear many sermons all the time, but we are deaf to them. If we were really alive and mindful, whenever we heard, saw, smelled, tasted, touched, we would realize that this is a fine sermon. If we really listen to the nature, we would see that there is no scripture that teaches so well as this experience with nature. If every one of us understands this principle, then absolutely everything in the world is speaking the Dharma for us. Good people speak good Dharma, bad people speak bad Dharma, and animals speak the Dharma of being animals for us. They enable us to understand how they got to be good, bad animals, and so on. According to Buddhist teachings, external realms are realms which are not created by the mind, but come from the outside, i.e., a prospect, region, territory, surroundings, views, circumstances, environment, area, field, sphere, environments, and conditions, i.e., the sphere of mind, the sphere of form for the eye, of sound for the ear, etc. If you can remain unperturbed by external states, then you are currently cultivating. On the contrary, if you're turned by external states, then you will fall. External states are also external conditions or circumstances which stir or tempt one to do evil. Problems and dissatisfaction do not develop because of external conditions, but from our own mind. If we don't have internal peace, nothing from outside can bring us happiness. According to the mind-only theories, different realms mean the ideas or mental states which arise according to the various objects or conditions toward which the mind is directed. According to the Foshan school, this group of elements falls under the general category of mental function, which has 5 elements: desire, verification, recollection, meditation, and wisdom. According to Lama Anarika Govinda, the Buddhist as well as a Zen practitioner does not believe in an independent or separate existing external world into those dynamic forces he could insert himself. The external world and his internal world are for him only 2 sides of the same fabric, in which threads of all force and of all events, of all forms of consciousness and of their objects, are woven into an inseparable net of endless, mutually conditioned relations. External realms are realms which are not created by the mind, but come from the outside. For example, some practitioners might see Buddhas and Bodhisattvas appearing before them, preaching the Dharma, exhorting and praising them. Others, while reciting the Buddha's name, suddenly experience an awakening and immediately see the land of ultimate bliss. Some practitioners, in the midst of their pure recitation, see deities and immortals arrive, join hands and circumambulate them respectfully, or invite them for a leisurely stroll. Still other practitioners see wandering souls of the dead arrive, seeking to take refuge with them. Yet others, having reached a high level in their practice, have to endure challenges and harassment from external demons. In case of seeing the Buddhas and lotus blossoms, is it not to see demonic apparitions? If cause and effect coincide, these are not demonic realms. This is because the Pure Land method belongs to the Dharma door of existence. When Pure Land practitioners first develop the Bodhi mind, they enter the way through forms and marks, and seek to view the celestial scenes of the Western Pure Land. When they actually witness these auspicious scenes, it is only a matter of effects corresponding to causes. If cause and effect are in accord, how can these be demonic realms? In the Zen school, on the other hand, the practitioner enters the way through the Dharma door of emptiness. Right from the beginning of his cultivation, he wipes out all marks, even the marks of the Buddhas or the Dharma are destroyed. The Zen practitioner does not seek to view the Buddhas or the lotus blossoms, yet the marks of the Buddhas or the lotus blossoms appear to him. Therefore, cause and effect do not correspond. For something to appear without a corresponding cause is indeed the realm of the demons. Thus, the Zen practitioner always holds the sword of wisdom aloft. If the demons come, he kills the demons. If the Buddha comes, he kills the Buddha. To enter the realm of true emptiness is not to tolerate a single mark. According to the Dharmalaksana, the objects of the outer world, Vasaya, which throw shadows on the mind face, are of 3 kinds. The theory of 3 kinds of the object domain may have originated from Nalander, but the 4-line memorial verse current in the school is probably of Chinese origin. It runs as follows. The object of nature does not follow the mind, subjective. The subject may be good or evil, but the object is always neutral. The mere shadow only follows the seeing, subjective. The object is as the subject imagines. The object with the original substance, the character, seed, etc., are various as occasions require. The object has an original substance, but the subject does not see it as it is. This 4-line verse explains how the 3 kinds of the object domain are related to the subjective function and the outer original substance. One may be puzzled in understanding how an idealism can have the so-called original substance. We should not forget that though it is an outer substance, it is after all a thing manifested out of ideation. The 8th, the alaya consciousness itself, is not an unchangeable fixed substance, dravya, but is itself ever-changing instantaneously, ksanika, and repeatedly, and being perfumed or having impressions made upon it by cognition and action, it becomes habituated and efficient in manifestation. It is like a current of water which never stops at one place for 2 consecutive moments. It is only with reference to the continuity of the stream that we can speak of a river. Let's examine these three kinds of object domain. First, object domain of nature or immediate perception. The object that has the original substance and presents it as it is, just as the five objects of the sense, form, sound, smell, taste, and touch, are perceived as they are. The first five sense consciousnesses and the eighth, the store consciousness, perceive the object in this way. Second, object domain with the original substance. The object has an original substance and yet is not perceived as it is. When the seventh, the thought center, looks at the subjective function of the eighth, the store center, it considers that it is self or ego. The subjective function of the eighth, the store center, has its original substance or entity, but it is not seen as it is by the seventh consciousness and is regarded to be self or an abiding ego, which is in reality an illusion since it is not self at all. Third, object domain of mere shadow or illusion. The shadow image appears simply from one's own imagination and has no real existence. Of course, it has no original substance as a ghost which does not exist at all. Only the sixth sense center functions on it and imagines it to be. Meditation helps our mental intelligence or spirit of mind be no longer troublesome with external things. Whether something objective is troublesome or not often depends on the state of mind rather than the object itself. If we think that it is trouble, then it is trouble. If we do not think that it is trouble, then it is not trouble. Everything depends on the mind. For example, sometimes during meditation we are interrupted by outside noises. If we dwell on them and cling to them, they will disturb our meditation, but if we dismiss them from our minds as soon as they arise, then they will not cause a disturbance. If we are always demanding something out of our life, then we will never be content. But if we accept life as it is, then we know contentment. Some people seek happiness through material things. Other people can be happy without many material things. Why? Because happiness is also a state of mind, not a quantitative measure of possessions. If we are satisfied with what we are and have now, then we are happy. But if we are not satisfied with what we are and have now, that is where unhappiness dwells. The desire is bottomless because no matter how much is put into it, it can never be filled up. It always remains empty. The sutra in 42 chapters taught, though a person filled with desires dwells in heaven, still that is not enough for him. Though a person who has ended desire dwells on the ground, still he is happy. Internal realms are also preaching the Dharma. According to Buddhist teachings, all things are our mind being manifested. That is to say, all phenomena are just internal or are just in this only one mind. As a matter of fact, if someone asks us to show our true nature, what can we do? We cannot reply that our true nature is in our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, or mind. It is nowhere to be found. However, when we look at the mountain, we see the mountain. That mountain is our mind being manifested. When we hear the bird song itself is our mind being manifested. Zen practitioners should always remember the Buddha's teaching in the Shurangama Sutra. The existence of all phenomena is the mind nature, and the mind nature is the existence of all phenomena. Also, according to Buddhist teachings, internal realms are also called realms of the self-mind because they do not come from outside, but develop from the mind. Those who do not clearly understand the truth that the 10,000 dharmas are created by the mind think that all realms come from the outside. This is wrong. When the practitioner reaches the stage of mutual interpenetration of mind and realms, completely severing external conditions, the seeds of latent dharmas in the alaya consciousness suddenly manifest themselves. For the Buddha recitation or mantra chanting practitioner, the power of the Buddha's name or the mantra penetrates deep into the mind, eliciting a reaction from the wholesome or evil seeds in the alaya consciousness. The realms that result are very complex and usually appear in dreams, or even when the practitioner is awake and striving to recite the Buddha's name. In Buddhism, this condition is called changing manifestations of the alaya consciousness. In the dreaming scenes, if the events or scenes result from evil seeds, the practitioner may see various species of worms crawling out of his body, or witness himself, night after night, removing from his body 6 or 7 loathsome creatures with many limbs, such as scorpions or centipedes. Or else, He may see various species of wild animals and/or spirits or ghosts. Such realms are innumerable and cannot all be described. In general, individuals greatly afflicted with greed, who are miserly and wicked, usually see marks of men and women, snakes and serpents, and odd species with white features and forms. Those harboring a great deal of anger and resentment usually see tigers and leopards or strange species with red forms and features. Those who are heavily deluded usually see domestic animals, clams, oysters, snails, or different species with black forms and features. The above, however, is merely indicative. It does not mean that everything will be exactly as described. If the scenes in his dream come from good wholesome seeds, the practitioner sees tall trees and exotic flowers, beautiful scenery, bright adorned with nets of pearls. Or else he sees himself eating succulent, fragrant food, wearing ethereal garments, dwelling in palaces of diamonds and other precious substances, or flying high in open space. Thus, in summary, all the seeds of the 10 Dharma realms are found in the minds of sentient beings. If wholesome seeds manifest themselves, practitioners view the realms of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, human and celestial beings. If evil karma is manifested, they witness scenes from the wretched 3 evil paths. If the cultivator has followed externalist ways in past lives, he usually sees his body emitting electric waves, or his soul leaving the body to roam, meeting demons, ghosts, and the like, to discuss politics and the rise and fall of countries and empires. On the other hand, when the practitioner's mind is pure, he will know in his dreams about events that will occur 3 or 4 days or 7 or 8 months hence. In general, those who have cultivated in previous lives will immediately see auspicious realms when reciting the Buddha's name. Those with heavy karma, lacking merit and virtue, will usually see evil realms when they begin Buddha recitation. In time, these evil omens will disappear and gradually be replaced with auspicious omens. If the practitioner's efforts have reached a high level, there are times during his walking hours when all deluded feelings suddenly cease for a while, body and mind being at ease and free. At other times, the practitioner may recite for 4 or 5 hours but feel that the time was very short, perhaps 2 or 3 minutes. Or else at times during recitation, wholesome omens will appear. At other times, unconsciously, his mind experiences great contentment and bliss. Sometimes he realizes for a split second that mind and realm are both empty. At other times, just by hearing or seeing something once, he becomes awakened to the truth of suffering, emptiness, impermanence, and no self, completely severing the marks of self in others. These occurrences are too numerous to be fully described. Visionary scenes such as the above, called internal realms or realms of the self-mind, have their origin in a thought of peace and stillness, or are caused by wholesome seeds generated by Buddha or mantra recitation. They appear suddenly and are lost immediately. The practitioner should not be attached to them, thinking that they are real, nor should he remember them fondly. It is an extreme mistake to develop nostalgia for them, thinking how ethereal, calm, and peaceful, beautiful, and well-adorned they were. They daydream about them, unable to forget them, longing for their reappearance. The ancients have criticized such thoughts as scratching in advance and waiting for the itch. This is because these scenes have their origin in diligent exertion and appear temporarily. They have no true existence. We should realize that when the practitioner exerts a certain level of efforts, the scenes and features particular to that level will appear naturally. Take the example of a traveler who views different scenery as he passes along various stretches of the road. If he has not reached home, yet develops such an attachment and fondness for a particular scene along the road that he refuses to proceed, his travel will be impeded. He will then be helplessly lost in the midst of his journey, not knowing when he will finally return home to rest. The practitioner is like that traveler. If he becomes attached to and fond of temporary realms and scenes, he will never attain the true realms. Were he to dream of them to the point of insanity, he would be destroyed by demons and waste an entire lifetime of practice. The Diamond Sutra states, "Everything in this world that has marks is illusory. To see marks as not marks is to see the Tathagata." Everything that has marks refers here to compounded, conditioned dharmas. Those marks cannot be said either to exist or not to exist, or to be true or false. Delusion arises precisely because unenlightened sentient beings discriminate, become attached, and think that these marks exist or do not exist, are real or are false. Even the fondness which some Zen practitioners develop for samadhi, upon entering concentration and experiencing this immense, empty, still, transparent, peaceful, and free realm, falls into the category of having marks. The same is true when these practitioners, once awakened to a certain lofty, transcendental principle, joyfully grasp at it. Once there are marks, there is delusion. To see marks means to see such marks as auspicious or evil, good or bad, dirty or clean, existent or non-existent, Buddha or sentient beings, even the realms of the 5 skandhas or the 6 dusts, etc. As not marks means seeing but neither becoming attached to nor rejecting them, just letting everything be. Why should we not reject them? It is because makers, while illusory, are not non-existent. This is not unlike the reflection of the moon in the water. Although the reflected moon is not real, this does not mean that there is no illusory mark of moonlight. Therefore, if we see marks appear while we are cultivating, we should disregard them and redouble our efforts, just like the traveler who views varied scenery en route but must push forward to reach home quickly. To see the Tathagata is to see the original Buddha nature, to see the way. In summary, all states of mind, from those described above to the state of one-pointedness of mind, belong to the category of internal realms. These realms have 2 aspects: attainment-like and partial attainment. Attainment-like realms appear temporarily and disappear immediately. Partial attainment realms are those that once achieved, we have forever, because we have actually attained a part of true thusness. Regardless of whether it is internal or external, if it is attainment-like, it is not a true realm. It is merely a full understanding of some of the manifestations of the true mind. Practitioners who truly seek liberation should not confuse these aspects, taking attainment-like marks for the true realm. Attainment-like marks are like a dark, leaden sky which suddenly clears, thanks to the winds which temporarily push away the dark clouds, letting a few rays of sunlight through before the sky becomes overcast again. They also resemble the mark of smoke just before the fire that people used to get when they rubbed 2 pieces of wood together. The true realm can be likened to the bright sunlight in a clear and calm sky. It is like rubbing pieces of wood together and already having fire. However, we should not underestimate attainment-like marks, as they demonstrate the genuine existence of the true realm. If from that level, we diligently redouble our efforts, the true realm is not that far away after all. All Dharma friends who cultivate together with us, good or evil, can directly or indirectly give us lectures on dharmas. According to Buddhism, all friends who cultivate with us, good or evil friends, can directly or indirectly give us lectures on dharmas in our path of cultivation. Good people speak good dharma, bad people speak bad dharma. For good advisors, we can directly learn good examples from them. For evil friends, we can also indirectly learn to do opposite to their behaviors, so we can prevent committing evil deeds. In Buddhism, there are 2 kinds of Dharma friends, fellow cultivators: good knowing advisors and evil advisors. Good knowing advisors, anyone, Buddha, Bodhisattva, wise person, virtuous friends, and even an evil being who can help the practitioner progress along the path to enlightenment. Good is kind and virtuous. Friend is a person who is worthy of giving others advice. Knowledgeable means having a broad and proper understanding of the truths. Awakened means no longer mesmerized by destinies of life. Thus, good knowledgeable, knowing, friend or advisor is a good person who has certain degree of knowledge of Buddhism and has the ability to benefit himself and others. A good knowledgeable, knowing friend is a friend in virtue, or a teacher who exemplifies the virtuous life and helps and inspires others to live a virtuous life too. A good friend who has a good and deep knowledge of the Buddhist teaching and who is currently practicing the law. Someone with knowledge, wisdom, and experience in Buddhist teaching and practicing. A wise counsel, spiritual guide, or honest and pure friend in cultivation. The Buddha talked about being a good knowing advisor in Buddhism as follows. When speaking of the good knowledgeable advisors, this is referring to the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, sound hearers, Pratyeka Buddhas, as well as those who have faith in the doctrine and sutras of Buddhism. The good knowledgeable advisors are those capable of teaching sentient beings to abandon the 10 evils or 10 unwholesome deeds, and to cultivate the 10 wholesome deeds. Moreover, the good knowledgeable advisor's speech is true to the Dharma, and their actions are genuine and consistent with their speech. Thus, not only do they not kill living creatures, they also tell others not to kill living things. Not only will they have the proper view, they also will use that proper view to teach others. The good knowledgeable advisors always have the Dharma of goodness, meaning whatever actions they may undertake, they do not seek for their own happiness, but for the happiness of all sentient beings. They do not speak of others' mistakes, but speak of virtues and goodness. There are many advantages and benefits to being close to the good knowledgeable advisors, just as from the 1st to the 15th lunar calendar, the moon will gradually become larger, brighter, and more complete. Similarly, the good knowledgeable advisors are able to help and influence the learners of the way to abandon gradually the various unwholesome dharma and to increase greatly wholesome dharma. There are 3 types of good spiritual advisors. Teaching spiritual advisor is someone conversant with the Dharma and experienced in cultivation. The retreat members can have him follow their progress, guiding them throughout the retreat, or they can simply seek guidance before and after the retreat. When several persons hold a retreat together, they should ask a spiritual advisor to lead the retreat and give a daily 15 to 30-minute inspirational talk. Caretaking spiritual advisor refers to one or several persons assisting with outside daily chores, such as preparing meals or cleaning up, so that on retreat can cultivate peacefully without distraction. Such persons are called retreat assistant. Common practice spiritual advisor are persons who practice the same method as the individuals on retreat. They keep an eye on one another, encouraging and urging each other on. These cultivators can either be participants in the same retreat or cultivators living nearby. In addition to keeping an eye out and urging the practitioners on, they can exchange ideas or experiences for the common good. This concept has been captured in a proverb: rice should be eaten with soup, practice should be conducted with friends. Nowadays, in order to have a right cultivation, Buddhist practitioners should be guided by a good advisor who has a thorough understanding of the sutras and many years' experience in meditation. This is one of the 5 necessary conditions for any Zen practitioners. If a Zen practitioner does not meet these 5 conditions, he is very easily subject to get harm from demon. According to the Kalyana Mitra Sutra, the Buddha taught, nowadays, if one wishes to find kind friends and virtuous teachers to learn and to be close to them, they may find these people in the shining examples in old books. Otherwise, if one searches among the living, it would be extraordinarily hard to find a single person. They also reminded us 5 things about good knowing advisor as follows. Nowadays, in 1,000 people there is 1 good person. In 1,000 good people, there is 1 person who knows religion. In 1,000 people who know religion, there is 1 person who has enough faith to practice religion. In 1,000 people who practice religion, there is 1 person who cultivates in a genuine and honest manner. Thus, out of 4,000 people, we would find only 4 good people. Thus, the Buddha always encouraged his disciples to listen to good knowing advisors without any doubt. Once we call someone our good knowing advisors, we should truly listen to their advice. If good knowing advisors say that cultivation requires arduous effort, we should truly believe it. If we believe completely, we will surely be able to understand the mind and see the nature, return to the origin, and go back to the source. Devout Buddhists should always listen to the instructions of a good knowing advisor. If he tells us to recite the Buddha's name, we should follow the instructions and recite. If he tells us not to be distracted, then we should not be distracted. This is the essential secret of cultivation that we can benefit from our good knowing advisors. The followings are the Buddha's teachings on good knowing advisors in the Dharmapada Sutra. Should you see an intelligent man who points out faults and blames what is blameworthy, you should associate with such a wise person. It should be better, not worse, for you to associate such a person. Those who advise, teach, or dissuade one from evil doing will be beloved and admired by the good, but they will be hated by the bad. Do not associate or make friends with evil friends. Do not associate with mean men. Associate with good friends. Associate with noble men. Those who drink the Dharma live in happiness with a pacified mind. The wise man ever rejoices in the Dharma expounded by the sages. If you get a prudent and good companion who is pure, wise, and overcoming all dangers to walk with, let nothing hold you back. Let find delight and instruction in his companion. If you do not get a prudent and good companion who is pure, wise, and overcoming all dangers to walk with, then like a king who has renounced a conquered kingdom, you should walk alone as an elephant does in the elephant forest. It is better to live alone than to be fellowship with the ignorant, the fool. To live alone doing no evil, just like an elephant roaming in the elephant forest. Evil friends, coarse people are always overwhelmed by anger and lacking loving kindness that they cannot appreciate the difference between wholesome and unwholesome activities. They do not know the benefit or appropriateness of paying respect to persons worthy of respect, nor of learning about the Dharma, nor of actually cultivating. They may be hot-tempered, easily victimized by anger and aversion. Their lives may be filled with rough and distasteful activities. What is the use of making friends with such people? On the contrary, good people have a deep considerateness and loving care for other beings. The warmth and love of their hearts is manifested in actions and speech. Refined people like these carry out their relationships with other people in sweet speech, beneficial action, and sharing a common aim. They always vow to give whatever they can give to benefit other people. In the Dharmapada Sutra, the Buddha taught, if a traveler does not meet a companion who is better or at least equal, let him firmly pursue his solitary career rather than being in fellowship with the foolish. Those who advise, teach, or dissuade one from evil doing will be beloved and admired by the good, but they will be hated by the bad. Do not associate or make friends with evil friends. Do not associate with mean men. Associate with good friends. Associate with noble men. He who companies with fools grieves for a long time. To be with the foolish is ever painful as with an enemy. To associate with the wise is ever happy like meeting with kinsfolk. All things are preaching the Dharma. Teach the Dharma, or teach the Dharma means to preach the truth so that people can realize the mortal danger, or to preach others about Buddha's teachings with the hope that they will eventually understand and be able to escape the cycle of births and deaths. According to the Agama Sutra, in 45 years of preaching the Dharma, the Buddha must have preached many hundreds of discourses, but he declared explicitly that he did preach only on suffering and the end of suffering, and nothing else. He exhorted his disciples to go forth to preach the Dharma and to explain the holy life for the welfare of the many, for the happiness of the many, out of compassion for the world, for the advantage, for the happiness of the deities and human beings. The Buddha made it very clear that his purpose in preaching the Dharma was not to quarrel with other religious leaders or to compete with antagonistic doctrines. There is no quarrel in his preaching. He just shows the way to enlightenment and liberation from all sufferings and afflictions. The Buddha is always filled with love and compassion for all living beings. Even when he takes a rest, he still wants to spread his love and compassion to other beings. His preaching is only performed out of compassion and love for the world. However, at the end of his life, the Buddha emphasized on, "Not a word has been said nor declared." This statement was said by the Buddha when he emphasized the danger of abusing words. He said, "In 45 years, I haven't said a word." Later, this statement has become popular when Zen masters using the statement to teach their disciples. Besides, the Buddha also emphasized on the unutterable. Later, in the 7th century, it became the Zen notion that Zen utilized to explain that the experience of awakening cannot be captured in words. This is connected with the general orientation of Zen, which is suspicious of the distorting power of words and concepts. Objectively speaking, the Buddha Dharma is so wonderful that so far no philosophers can ever argue or deny. To many people, Buddhism is always the best. However, for non-Buddhists, the so-called wonderful teachings seem nonsensical if they do not have the opportunity to hear them. How sorry. It is certainly that the majority of religions want to transform a bad person into a good one, but there are still a lot of religious cults that rigidly give people with blind faith and make them more and more ignorant. Therefore, we need more Buddhist lectures to propagate the wonderful Buddha Dharma. All things in the world are constantly expounding the Dharma. Some things expound wholesome Dharma, while others expound unwholesome Dharma. Some things speak of the deviant knowledge and views of heretics. Others speak of the proper knowledge and views of the ultimate meaning of the middle way. In other words, those that speak wholesome Dharma teach people to see through things, to let things go, and to become free. Those that speak unwholesome Dharma teach people to preserve their illusions and continue to cling tightly to things, and so on, and so on. According to the Avatamsaka Sutra, the Buddhas manifest hundreds of thousands of millions of sounds to proclaim the wonderful Dharma for sentient beings. We, ordinary people, should always remember that all the sounds in the world are speaking the Dharma for us. For example, the sounds of the stream and creeks are just like the soft sounds from the golden mouth of the Buddha. The green color of the mountains and forests is the pure color of the Dharma body, delighting those who see it. Fish swim in the water, but they don't know they are in water. Every moment we breathe in air, but we do it unconsciously. We would be conscious of air only if we were without it. In the same way, we are always hearing the sounds of cars, waterfalls, rain, etc., but we do not realize that all these sounds are sermons. They are the voice of the Buddha himself preaching to us. In fact, we hear many sermons all the time, but we are deaf to them. If we were really alive and mindful, whenever we heard, saw, smelled, tasted, touched, we would realize that this is a fine sermon. If we really listen to the nature, we would see that there is no scripture that teaches so well as this experience with nature. If every one of us understands this principle, then absolutely everything in the world is speaking the Dharma for us. Good people speak good Dharma, bad people speak bad Dharma, and animals speak the Dharma of being animals for us. They enable us to understand how they get to be good, bad animals, and so on. If you observe cats chase mice, lions chase tigers, tigers chase bears, bears chase deers, the strong oppress the weak, and so on. They are all speaking the Dharma for us. Each has its own cause and effect. When we contemplate and understand things this way, we can get rid of all attachments. If not, we will forever be sinking in the sea of life of attachments. Besides, all things are our mind being manifested. That is to say, all phenomena are just this only one mind. As a matter of fact, if someone asks us to show our true nature, what can we do? We cannot reply that our true nature is in our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, or mind. It is nowhere to be found. However, when we look at the mountain, we see the mountain. That mountain is our mind being manifested. When we hear the bird song itself is our mind being manifested. Zen practitioners should always remember the Buddha's teaching in the Shurangama Sutra. The existence of all phenomena is the mind nature, and the mind nature is the existence of all phenomena. All the myriad things are speaking the truth. Suffering and the end of suffering. All things in the world are constantly expounding the Dharma. Some things expound wholesome Dharma, while others expound unwholesome Dharma. Some things speak of the deviant knowledge and views of heretics. Others speak of the proper knowledge and views of the ultimate meaning of the middle way. In other words, those that speak wholesome Dharma teach people to see through things, to let things go, and to become free. Those that speak unwholesome Dharma teach people to preserve their illusions and continue to cling tightly to things, and so on, and so on. According to the Avatamsaka Sutra, the Buddhas manifest hundreds of thousands of millions of sounds to proclaim the wonderful Dharma for sentient beings. We, ordinary people, should always remember that all the sounds in the world are speaking the Dharma for us. For example, the sounds of the stream and creeks are just like the soft sounds from the golden mouth of the Buddha. The green color of the mountains and forests is the pure color of the Dharma body, delighting those who see it. If every one of us understands this principle, then absolutely everything in the world is speaking the Dharma for us. Good people speak good Dharma, bad people speak bad Dharma, and animals speak the Dharma of being animals for us. They enable us to understand how they got to be good, bad animals, and so on. If you observe cats chase mice, lions chase tigers, tigers chase bears, bears chase deers, the strong oppress the weak, and so on. They are all speaking the Dharma for us. Each has its own cause and effect. When we contemplate and understand things this way, we can get rid of all attachments. If not, we will forever be sinking in the sea of life of attachments. Practitioners contemplate on everything that is preaching the Dharmas. As we proceed with our practice, we must be willing to carefully examine every experience, every sense door. For example, practice with a sense object such as sound. Having heard is the same as not having heard. Listen, our hearing is one thing, the sound is another. We are aware, and that is all there is to it. There is no one, nothing else. Learn to pay careful attention, rely on nature in this way, and contemplate to find the truth. We will see how things separate themselves. When the mind does not grasp or take a vested interest, does not get caught up, things become clear. When the ear hears, observe the mind. Does it get caught up and make a story out of the sound? Is it disturbed? We can know this, stay with it, be aware. At times we may want to escape from the sound, but that is not the way out. We must escape through awareness. Whenever we hear a sound, it registers in our mind as this common nature. We cannot expect to have tranquility as soon as we start to practice. We should let the mind think, let it do as it will, just watch it and not react to it. Then, as things contact the senses, we should practice equanimity. See all sense impressions as the same. See how they come and go. Keep the mind in the present. Do not think about what is past. Do not think, tomorrow I am going to do it. If we see the true characteristics of things in the present moment, at all times, then everything is Dharma revealing itself. Contemplation on everything will help us realize that all things are impermanent and have no self. Look at the person we are now. We see it as different from thousands and millions of persons we were yesterday. Therefore, we see we are just a stream running swiftly, manifesting endlessly in different forms, as waves rising and falling, as bubbles forming and popping. Waves and bubbles continuously appear, but water remains unmoved, has no form, and stays unconditioned. Once we realize this, we will become more and more mindful of the way to emancipation and no longer want to cling to this suffering world. In Zen, the mirror is a symbol of the mind. We can turn the mirror in any direction and see it always reflects equally. After realizing this, in other words, after realizing the true mind, we see that all phenomena become one with us. All things are mind manifested. We are what we think, what we feel, what we hear and see, and so on. Thus, whatever we see, whatever we do, notice everything. Train the mind until it is firm, until it lays down all experiences. Then things will come and we will perceive them without becoming attached. We do not have to force the mind and sense object apart. As we practice, they separate by themselves, showing the simple elements of body and mind. As we learn about sights, sounds, smells, and tastes according to the truth, we will see that they all have common nature, impermanent, unsatisfactory, and empty of self. Mindfulness constantly with us, protecting the mind. If our mind can reach this state wherever we go, there will be a growing understanding within us, which is called investigation, one of the 7 factors of enlightenment. It revolves, it spins, it converses with itself, it solves, it detaches from feelings, perceptions, thoughts, consciousness. Nothing can come near it. It has its own work to do. This awareness is an automatic aspect of the mind that already exists and that you discover when we train in the beginning stages of practice. Do we put the meditation aside for a rest after the period of sitting meditation? Do not put the meditation aside for a rest. Some people think that they can stop as soon as they come out of a period of formal practice. Having stopped formal practice, they stop being attentive, stop contemplating. Do not do it that way. Whatever we see, we should contemplate. If we see good people or bad people, rich people or poor people, watch. When we see old people or young children, contemplate all of it. This is the mind of our practice. Place all attachments in our awareness. In contemplating to seek the Dharma, we should observe the characteristics, the cause and effect, the play of all the objects of our senses, big and small, white and black, good and evil. If there is thinking, simply contemplate it as thinking. All these things are impermanent, unsatisfactory, and empty of self, so do not cling to them. Place them all in our awareness. Zen practitioners should always try to look into the truth, for once we can see the impermanence and emptiness of all things, we can put an end to suffering. Keep contemplating and examining this life. Notice what happens when something good comes to us. Are we happy? We should contemplate that happiness. Perhaps we use something for a while and then start to dislike it, wanting to give it or sell it to someone else. If no one comes to buy it, we may even try to throw it away. Why are we like this? Our life is impermanent, constantly subject to change. We must look at its true characteristics. Thus, Zen practitioners should always contemplate that all such things are impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not self. Once we completely understand just one of these incidents, we will understand them all. They are all of the same nature. Perhaps we do not like a particular sight or sound. Such things do happen. When we realize clearly that all such things are impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not self, we will dump them all and attachment will not arise. When we see that all the various things that come to we are the same, there will be only Dharma arising. Zen practitioners should always remember that all faculties contemplate one another. When we practice sitting meditation, let our eyes contemplate our nose, let our nose contemplate our mouth, and let our mouth contemplate our mind. This allows us to control the unrest mind, or the monkey of the mind, and rein the wild horse of our thoughts, so that they stop running outside seeking things. Practitioners should not stare left and right, because if we look around, then our mind will wander outside, and we will not be able to concentrate. When we realize the true nature of phenomena, we will see that emptiness and existence are inseparable. If we really live in harmonious with emptiness and existence, we indeed live with the realization that emptiness is inseparable from existence. Finally, Zen practitioners should always remember that although all things are just like dreams, like echoes, like mirages, but we are still trapped in this world and confronted by sufferings. Therefore, the Buddha taught, it is important to guard the mind carefully, just like thatching a roof, for the rain of passions would not penetrate the house. Practitioners should utilize the non-dual knowledge to examine all things in this world. Buddhism believes that all things being produced by cause and environment are unreal. Therefore, we cannot say they are different and opposite. All dharmas are created only by the mind, or everything is created by mind alone. Myriad things but one mind, all things is noumenal. According to the Sun-Faced Buddha, the teachings of Matsu in the Hangzhou school of Chan, one day Zen master Matsu entered the hall and preached the assembly. Though the reflections of the moon are many, the real moon is only one. Though there are many springs of water, water has only one nature. There are myriad phenomena in the universe, but empty space is only one. There are many principles that are spoken of, but unobstructed wisdom is only one. Whatever we established, it all comes from one mind. Whether constructing or sweeping away, all is sublime function. All is oneself. There is no place to stand where one leaves the truth. The very place one stands on is the truth. It is all one's being. If that was not so, then who is that? All dharmas are Buddha dharmas, and all dharmas are liberation. Liberation is identical with suchness. All dharmas never leave suchness. Whether walking, standing, sitting, or reclining, everything is always in conceivable function. The sutras say that the Buddha is everywhere. As a matter of fact, everything reverts to one, the mind. Zen master Sung San wrote, in the whole world is a single flower. One day, as the big temple bell was being rung, the Buddha asked Ananda, where does the bell sound come from? The bell, replied Ananda. The Buddha said, the bell, but if there were no bell stick, how would the sound appear? Ananda hastily corrected himself. The stick, the stick. The Buddha said, the stick. If there were no air, how could the sound come here? Yes, of course, it comes from the air. The Buddha asked, air? But unless you have an ear, you cannot hear the bell sound. Yes, I need an ear to hear it, so it comes from my ear. The Buddha said, your ear? If you have no consciousness, how can you understand the bell sound? My consciousness makes the sound. Your consciousness. So Ananda, if you have no mind, how do you hear the bell sound? It was created by mind alone. Robert Aiken wrote in Encouraging World, all things reflect, interpenetrate, and indeed contain all other things. This is the organic nature of the universe and is called mutual interdependence in classical Buddhism. Affinity and coincidence are its surface manifestations. The other is no other than myself. This is the foundation of the precepts and the inspiration for genuine human behavior. To acknowledge one's own dark side with a smile and to acknowledge the shining side of the other person with a smile, this is practice. Keeping the shining side of oneself always in view and holding fast to the dark side of the other, this is not practice. Buddhist practitioners should realize what kind of truth. That is the truth about the absolute in everything, or the ultimate reality behind everything. In short, Buddhist practitioners should always remember that the opportunity our precious human lives does not last forever. Sooner or later, death comes to everyone. The very true nature of our lives is impermanent and death inevitable. When we first took birth, given the countless number of bodies into which we have been born, death is an irrevocable result of living. Therefore, we should not ignore it. On the contrary, it is good to think about it seriously. According to the Buddhist point of view, death is not an end, but a means leading to another rebirth. The conscious mind only migrates from life to life. The starting point of such a process is impossible to retrace. However, our existence in samsara is not naturally infinite. Also, according to the Buddhist point of view, it is possible to put an end to it. A seed has no beginning, but it is not naturally infinite. If we burn the seed, we can destroy its potential to grow. That is the end of sufferings and afflictions. Devout Buddhists should also always remember that sufferings and afflictions only be eliminated when we understand things as they really are. That is, seeing the impermanent, unsatisfactory, and non-substantial or non-self nature of the five aggregates of clinging in ourselves. It is not easy to understand ourselves because of our wrong concepts, baseless illusions, perversions, and delusions. It is so difficult to see the real person. The Buddha taught that to be a real knower, we must first see and understand the impermanence of the five aggregates. He compares material form or body to a lump of foam, feeling to a bubble, perception to a mirage, mental formations or volitional activities to water lily plant which is without heartwood, and consciousness to an illusion. The Buddha says, whatever material form there be, whether past, future, or present, internal, external, gross or subtle, low or lofty, far or near, that material form is empty, unsubstantial, and without essence. In the same manner, the remaining aggregates, feeling, perception, mental formation, and consciousness are also empty, unsubstantial, and without essence. Thus, the five aggregates are impermanent. Whatever is impermanent, that is suffering, unsatisfactory, and without self. Whenever you understand this, you understand yourselves. Once having seen and understood the preaching of dharmas of all things, that is to say, we have thoroughly understood their true nature, we will have gone beyond wrongdoing and wrong understanding. Our mind will have turned, will have changed direction, and it will not be able to fall back into sufferings and afflictions again. Finally, when we inwardly observe the mind, yet there is no mind. When we externally observe the physical body, yet there is no physical body. At that time, both mind and body are empty, and we have no obstructions when observing external objects. They are existing, yet in our eyes they do not exist. We reach the state where the body, the mind, and external objects, all three have vanished. They are existing but causing no obstructions for us. That is to say, we are wholeheartedly following the principle of emptiness, and the middle way is arising from it. In the middle way there is no joy, no anger, no sorrow, no fear, no love, no disgust, and no desire. When we contemplate on everything, we should always remember that internally there are no idle thoughts, and externally there is no greed. Both the body and mind are all clear and pure. When we contemplate on things, if we are delighted by pleasant states and upset by states of anger, we know that our nature is not settled. If we experience greed or disgust when states appear, we also know that our nature is not settled. Devout Buddhists should always remember that we should be happy whether a good or bad state manifests. Whether it is a joyful situation or an evil one, we will be happy either way. This kind of happiness is true happiness, unlike the happiness brought about by external situations. Our mind experiences boundless joy. We are happy all the time and never feel any anxiety or affliction. Devout Buddhists should always remember about the three unattainable mind. The mind of the past is unattainable. the mind of the present is unattainable, and the mind of the future is unattainable. Thus, when a situation arises, deal with it, but do not try to exploit it. When the situation is gone, it leaves no trace, and the mind is as pure as if nothing happens. Buddhist practitioners see things. Practitioners see things as they really are. Ignorance is not seeing things as they really are. It is failing to understand the truth about life. Ignorance is the opposite of the word to know. In Buddhism, ignorance means not knowing, not seeing, not understanding, being unclear, and so forth. Whoever is dominated by ignorance is like a blind person because the eyes are shut, or not seeing the true nature of objects, and not understanding the truths of cause and effect, and so on. Ignorance is the root of all sufferings and afflictions. Due to ignorance, people cannot distinguish between right and wrong. They become blind under the delusion of self, clinging to things which are impermanent, changeable, and perishable. As long as we have not developed our minds to obtain wisdom, we remain ignorant of the true nature of things. According to Buddhism, ignorance means regarding the self as real. Ignorance is the main cause of our non-enlightenment. Ignorance owes only a false mark, so it is subject to production, extinction, increase, decrease, defilement, purity, and so on. Ignorance is the main cause of our birth, old age, worry, grief, misery, and sickness and death. Due to ignorance, people do not see things as they really are and cannot distinguish between right and wrong. They become blind under the delusion of self, clinging to things which are impermanent, changeable, and perishable. Once anger arises, one has nothing but ignorance. In order to eliminate ignorance, you should meditate on causality. All of our psychological problems are rooted in ignorance, in delusion. Ignorance is the crowning corruption. Our greeds, hates, conceits, and a host of other defilements go hand in hand with our ignorance. The solutions are to be found in the problems themselves, and hence we should not run away from our problems. Analyze and scrutinize the problems, and you will see that they are human problems, so do not attribute them to non-humans. Our real problems can be solved only by giving up illusions and false concepts and bringing our lives into harmony with reality, and this can be done only through meditation. Practitioners always have an objective view on all things. The Buddha taught, the mind is like a monkey, the thought is like a horse. Whenever our mind wanders to other thoughts, be aware of them, but do not get involved in them emotionally or intellectually. Do not comment, condemn, evaluate, or appraise them, but bring our attention back to the nature rhythm of our breathing. Our mind may be overwhelmed by evil and unwholesome thoughts. This is to be expected. It is in meditation that we understand how our mind works. Become aware of both the good and evil, the ugly and beautiful, the wholesome and unwholesome thoughts. Do not elated with our good thoughts and depressed with the bad. These though come and go like actors on a stage. When we hear sounds, become aware of them and bring our attention back to our breath. The same with regard to smell, taste, which you may get mentally, touch, pain, pleasure, and so forth. Sincere Buddhists should observe the thoughts in a calm, detached way. Mindfulness means observing whatever happens inside oneself, whenever one does, not judging it as good or bad, just by watching with naked awareness. Sincere Buddhists should always observe things objectively, not subjectively, observing with our naked awareness. In Buddhist cultivation, impartial observation is the key to release all attachments. Therefore, the Buddha stressed the importance of objective observation, one of the keys to the Buddhist cultivation. Through objective observation, we realize the real face of sufferings and afflictions. It's this objective observation that gives us an opportunity to cultivate, to totally destroy sufferings and afflictions. Thus, objective observation plays a key role in the process of cultivation. Buddhists should always remember the Buddha's advice. You should always have an objective, not a subjective view on all things, for this will help you to be able to see things as they really are. In the Satipatthana Sutta, contemplation of mind is especially concerned with an objective view, not a subjective one. Even the practice of all the four types of contemplation, of body, feelings, mind, and mental objects, should be done objectively without any subjective reaction. We should never be an interested observer, but a bare observer. Then only can we see the object in its proper perspective, as it really is, and not as it appears to be. When we observe a thing subjectively, our mind gets involved in it. We tend to identify ourselves with it. We judge, evaluate, appraise, and comment on it. Such subjective observation colors our view. Thus, in Buddhist practice, we should cultivate and contemplate without any biases, prejudices, likes, dislikes, and other preconceived considerations and notions. Especially in meditation, contemplation and mindfulness should be practiced in an objective way, as if we were observing the object of outside. Sincere Buddhists should always remember the Buddhist teachings. In what is seen, there should be to you only the seen. In the heard, there should be only the heard. In what is sensed, there should be only the sensed. In what is cognized, there should be only the cognized. Only with objective looking, the idea of I am seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and cognizing is removed. The I concept as well as the ego illusion is also eliminated. Expounding the Dharmas according to the Vimalakirti Sutra. According to the Vimalakirti Sutra, one day when Moggalliyana came to Vaisali to expound the Dharma to lay Buddhists in the street there, Vimalakirti came to him and said, Moggalliyana, when expounding the Dharma to these upasakas, you should not preach like that, for what you teach should agree with the absolute Dharma, which is free from the illusion of living beings, is free from the self, for it is beyond an ego, from life, for it is beyond birth and death, and from the concept of a man which lacks continuity, thought seemingly continuous like a torch whirled around, is always still, for it is beyond stirring phenomena, is above form, for it is causeless, is inexpressible, for it is beyond word and speech, is inexplainable, for it is beyond intellection, is formless like empty space, is beyond sophistry, for it is immaterial, is egoless, for it is beyond the duality of subject and object, is free from discrimination, for it is beyond consciousness, is without compare, for it is beyond all relativities, is beyond cause, for it is causeless, is identical with dharmata, or dharma nature, the underlying nature of all things, is in line with the absolute, for it is independent, dwells in the region of absolute reality, being above and beyond all dualities, is unmovable, for it does not rely on the six objects of sense, neither comes nor goes, for it does not stay anywhere, is in line with voidness, formlessness, and inactivity, is beyond beauty and ugliness, neither increases nor decreases, is beyond creation and destruction, does not return to anywhere, is above the six sense organs of eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, is neither up nor down, is eternal and immutable, and is beyond contemplation and practice. Moggalliyana, such being the characteristics of the Dharma, how can it be expounded? For expounding it is beyond speech and indication, and listening to it is above hearing and grasping. This is like a conjurer expounding the Dharma to illusory men, and you should always bear all this in mind when expounding the Dharma. You should be clear about the sharp or dull roots of your audience, and have a good knowledge of this to avoid all sorts of hindrance. Before expounding the Dharma, you should use your great compassion for all living beings to extol Mahayana to them, and think of repaying your own debt of gratitude to the Buddha by striving to preserve the three treasures of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha forever. Also, according to the Vimalakirti Sutra, Vimalakirti reminded Purna that expounding Dharma should always be in accordance with sentient beings' faculties. Purna Maitrenai Putra, you should first enter the state of samadhi to examine the minds of your listeners before expounding the Dharma to them. Do not put rotten food in precious bowls. You should know their minds and do not take their precious crystal for ordinary glass. If you do not know their propensities, do not teach them Hinayana. They have no wounds, so do not hurt them. To those who want to tread the wide path, do not show narrow tracks. Do not enclose the great sea in the print of an ox's foot. Do not liken sunlight to the dim glow of a firefly. Purnamaitrayana Putra, these bhikshus have long ago developed the Mahayana mind, but they now forget all about it. How can you teach them Hinayana? Wisdom is taught by Hinayana is shallow. It is like a blind man who cannot discern the sharp from the dull roots of living beings. According to the Vimalakirti Sutra, Vimalakirti reminded Mahakatyayana not to use mortal mind to preach immortal reality as follows. Mahakatyayana said, Vimalakirti came and said, Mahakatyayana, do not use your mortal mind to preach immortal reality. Mahakatyayana, all things are fundamentally above creation and destruction. This is what impermanence means. The 5 aggregates are perceived as void and not arising. This is what suffering means. All things are basically non-existent. This is what voidness means. Ego and its absence are not a duality. This is what egolessness means. All things basically are not what they seem to be. They cannot be subject to extinction now. This is what nirvana means. 14 inexpressible things. The Buddha always reminded his assemblies on many things that people should not mention in any occasion. Among them, there are 14 important inexpressible things. Devout Buddhists only talk when they need to talk. In fact, Buddha Sakyamuni refrained from giving a definitive answer to many metaphysical questions of his time. Questions of self exists, not self exists, if the world is eternal or unending or no, etc. According to the Buddha, a silent person is very often a wise person because he or she avoids wasting energy or negative verbiage. If the person asks because he wants to cause troubles for the Buddha will remain silent. One day a certain man said to the Buddha that he would join the band of his disciples if the Buddha would give clear answer to the questions. Would the Buddha ever die? And if so, what would become of him after death? What was the first cause of the universe, and what was the universe going to be like in the future? Why do men live, and what becomes of them after death? If the person asks because he wants to cause troubles for the Buddha will remain silent. If the person asks because he wants to study, the Buddha's answer was to the following effect. Suppose you were shot by a poison arrow, and a physician came to draw the arrow from your body and to dress the wound. Would you first ask him questions as to what the arrow was made of, what the composition of the poison was, and who shot the arrow? And if the physician did not dress the wound, what was going to happen, and such blissful questions, and refuse the treatment until the physician answered all the questions to your satisfaction? You would be dead before you obtained the answers. In this parable, the Buddha advised the questioner to become his disciple without wasting his time on problems which were too profound to be understood by an ordinary man. Probably a long cultivation as a disciple of the Buddha he might come to understand. According to the Madhyamaka philosophy, the mysterious silence of the Buddha on most fundamental questions of metaphysics led him to probe into the reason of that silence. Was the Buddha agnostic, as some of the European writers on Buddhism believe him to be? If not, what was the reason of his silence? Through a searching inquiry into this silence was the dialectic born. There are well-known questions which the Buddha declared to be avyakarta, or the answers to which were inexpressible. Kadrakirti enumerates them in his commentary on the Madhyamaka Sastra, that the Buddha announced 14 things to be inexpressible, as mentioned in the following sentences. Whether the world is eternal, not eternal, both eternal and not eternal, neither eternal nor not eternal, and so on. Whether the world is finite, infinite, both finite and infinite, neither finite nor infinite, and so on. Whether the Tathagata exists after death, does not exist after death, either exists or does not exist after death, neither exists nor does not exist after death. Whether the soul is identical with the body, different with the body, and so on.